Hi, I'm Fern Richardson, and I blog about container gardening at lifeonthebalcony.com, and I share my tips about container gardening on balconies and patios and rooftops, and hopefully inspire you to garden on yours. And my blog is about container gardening and other urban gardening things, like occasionally guerrilla gardening, which is gardening on other people's property, sometimes without their permission. Don't tell anyone. And also, if you have a barbecue out on your balcony, occasionally I share some recipes about that, but mostly about container gardening. Mostly it was out of frustration that no one else was writing Life on the Balcony. When I first started container gardening seriously on my own little patio, no one else was writing about gardening in containers, and that bummed me out. And I thought, man, if I'm bummed about it, someone else must be too. And so I just started sharing what I knew, and the rest is history. Well, I have an aunt who's very talented at coming up with catchy names, and we worked together forever trying to come up with a good name that had, some keywords in it so that people would be able to find me through Google. And we just played around with lots of different things, and obviously plants are life, so Life on the Balcony, eventually it just clicked. Well, in 2010, I took the Master Gardener class through the Orange County Cooperative Extension, so I've got a little bit of official training, but mostly it's just live and learn from gardening almost all throughout my life. I started when I was about 9 years old, and I've been gardening in my parents' backyard and then on my own balconies. As far as blogging goes, I'd tried out a few different other little blogs about various different things, and I'd read some blogging about blogging blogs like ProBlogger, and so I'd gotten a few tips from them and some experience under my belt, and then I just started blogging at Life on the Balcony, and I continue to try and read about it to continue to get tips, especially now as social media becomes a lot more important to promoting a blog. So I'm constantly just reading what other people are saying out there. Well, if anyone would like to have me at a corporate event, I'd love to talk to them about gardening at work. That's something that I'm doing at my current job as well as my last job, and it's a lot of fun. It brings about a lot of camaraderie between coworkers. It doesn't cost the employer anything, but it really improves employee morale. But mostly I would imagine people would have me speaking at conferences and small, at nurseries and that sort of thing. And there I'd love speaking about gardening with edibles, especially making edible containers beautiful. They don't have to be just utilitarian. I love flowers, and I love talking about how to grow different plants in pots, so that's what I would imagine people would invite me to speak about. It's kind of the same thing as with my blog, where there was no one writing the blog that I wanted to read, so I started writing a blog, Life on the Balcony, and then no one was writing the books that I wanted to read. I really wanted to read a container gardening book about people who can only garden in containers. A lot of the container gardening books out there are just for people who have huge yards and they just want one or two containers over there to dress something up or something. But I wanted inspiration about how to design a balcony garden or a rooftop garden, how to deal with all the sorts of crazy things that we urban container gardeners deal with, like neighbors who have ugly couches on their balcony that you don't want to look at, and all of these other things. So I wrote the book that I really wanted to read. Kind of humbling, I guess. There's a lot of really very talented writers and gardeners out there, and to be among them and to get their acknowledgement that Life on the Balcony is a pretty cool blog is just really humbling, and I really appreciate that my fellow gardeners and garden writers acknowledged me in that way. In 2010, Life on the Balcony won the Mouse and Trowel Awards, and it was a really great award system, kind of like the Oscars for garden bloggers, but I think it's now defunct. But it was a really cool award, and it basically everyone submitted their nominations, and then it got whittled down and people could vote, kind of the typical online award system. Well, way back when I don't want to admit, when I was 9 years old, my family went on a trip to Yosemite, and my parents took me into the bookstore, and I got a book about bringing wildlife into your backyard. And I grew up in Orange County, and I'm not sure how much wildlife is back there, but I was really inspired. And so I brought the book home and I started gardening like crazy in my parents' yard. They're not gardeners at all, so they didn't mind. I tore up their whole yard trying to bring in birds and bees and rabbits and all sorts of things that don't really exist in Orange County. But it got me started and hooked, and my grandma started giving me cuttings, and it was a really cool way to spend time with her. She would let me come over to her yard and work on things. And really then once you're hooked and you realize how neat it is to raise something from a seed or a cutting and grow it into a big plant and eat the harvest or enjoy the flowers, it's just kind of addicting, and the rest is history. Well, what I would really say is don't give up. A lot of beginning gardeners think that if they kill something, it's something that they did, or they're a bad gardener, or they have a black thumb, and it's really not true. The most seasoned professional gardener with tons of degrees in horticulture will tell you that they kill stuff all the time, probably several plants a year at least. So if you kill something, instead of giving up and thinking that you have a black thumb, consider what you did wrong. Did you overwater? Did you underwater? Did pests strike that you had nothing to, no control over, or a disease? But try and figure it out, and try and, Google is a great thing. Google what you think went wrong and see what other people say, and then try again. Don't give up. Well, a lot of things. To be patient. Gardening is not a get-rich-quick sort of thing. It's especially if you start with seeds, it's a long process, and it's nice to stop and take the time to do that. Again, not to give up when you kill something, especially when you kill a beloved plant. It's frustrating and you want to throw it all away, but hey, get another plant and give it another try and try to do better this time. The first thing to start with is pots. You need to get inexpensive ones somewhere. You can use 5-gallon buckets, which are really cheap from your hardware store, or maybe you can even find them, or you're reusing one that you got something else in. But also go to flea markets and your neighbors' garage sales. A lot of times they're selling stuff that you can remake into pots, because pots are the most expensive part of container gardening. So once you've got some sort of repurposed something or other to use as your container, then you need plants. Plants can be expensive too, but if you start with seeds, then that's a pretty frugal way to go. Seeds are only a couple bucks a packet, and if you get together with some of your friends who are also wanting to garden on the cheap, then you can share the seeds, because there's usually way more than you need in there. You can also take cuttings. Don't take cuttings from your neighbors without asking, but a lot of times they're willing to share. Gardeners are a really friendly, helpful bunch. So if you take cuttings from your friends' plants, that's another way to get free plants. And from a scientific approach, actually speaking to your plants, I doubt it does anything. But I think it is beneficial, and here's why. If you're out there talking to your plants, developing a relationship with them, caring for them, then you're looking at what's going on, and you might see that, hey, your plant is telling you something by having wilted leaves or yellow leaves, or if you stick your finger in the soil and it's dry. Those are the ways that your plant is talking back to you. So if you're out there chatting with your plant, take a look around, because your plant is responding, just not with words. And Southern California gardening is really strange, especially since all of the gardening books out there are written with the concept of 4 seasons in mind, and we don't have 4 seasons. But fall and winter are a fantastic time to garden in Southern California. We can grow kale, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. They're very good. Don't shake your head at the Brussels sprouts. Carrots, radishes, spinach, lettuce. All of the things that you were frustrated with probably growing in summer, because that's what they can grow back east and in the Midwest, are growing great in the fall. Yes, there's a fantastic website maintained by the University of California at Davis, and it's called, and the web address is ipm.ucdavis.edu. And what IPM stands for is Integrated Pest Management. And basically the philosophy is using the least Basically, the philosophy of IPM is to use the least harmful methods first. So all of your organic solutions. And for home gardeners, they almost never suggest using chemical pesticides. But what they are going to show you is all sorts of ideas for growing healthier plants, cultural practices. What a lot of people don't realize is that pests are often, or a pest infestation, not a little bit of pests, but a lot of pests, is a sign that there's some sort of cultural problem. Maybe you're not watering enough, maybe you didn't pull enough weeds around your plant, that sort of thing. And so if you go to that website, ipm.ucdavis.edu, they will give you all of the great tips that you need to garden in a greenway. I assume that this question is referring to those like mosquito zapping devices, in which case they're great for catching bugs that are flying, like mosquitoes, beetles, all sorts of those sorts of pests. But a lot of the most annoying pests aren't really flying, you know, the caterpillars, the aphids, all of that sort of thing. So on the one hand, they're good for stopping flying pests, but they're not going to be your total pest solution. You'll need some other stuff too. Snails and slugs are a very big problem, a real pain in the you-know-what. But there's a great product out there. It's called, from Grow Power, it's called Snail and Slug Be Gone, I think. But basically it's little granules of nutshells, and they've coated them with cinnamon oil. And cinnamon oil, when it comes in contact with the slime of the snails, it starts foaming, and I think it dehydrates the snail, but whatever it does, it kills the snail, and they won't be able to cross it. So what you need to do is sprinkle that around the base of your plants, especially around plants that snails love, like lettuces and leafy greens, and the snails won't be able to get to it. If you can't find that product, copper wire is also really good. They won't cross it, so you just need to wrap copper wire or copper tape around your pot. Well, start small. Just start with one pot of, you know, your favorite herb or a delicious heirloom tomato, and if you can handle that and it fits into your lifestyle, then add another one. And if that second one is too much work, then hey, let that one die. Oh well, toss it into the compost pile or your green trash can, and stick with your one pot. No, but now that you say it, that might be a great thing. Maybe we could do a garden that's conducive to going out there with his acoustic guitar. He'd probably make me clean out some of my plants from our balcony, so we'd probably have to make room, but that's a great idea. Well, try and figure out what happened. A lot of times people are overwatering, and so you can Google, you know, overwatering, and you'll see all sorts of samples of what an overwatered plant looks like, how to read the signs, you know, that sort of thing. So if you just have an investigative kind of personality or approach to finding out what happened with your dead plant, then you can not do it next time. And then you'll kill your plant from something else, and you'll figure that one out. And then pretty soon, once you've killed enough plants, you'll be a green thumb, and you will know all the things you need to know about gardening. Well, I would say start small. Start with something that you actually like. A lot of people, you know, grow the herbs that they think they're supposed to grow, and they grow tomatoes because that's what everyone does. But if you hate tomatoes and you hate herbs, or you like some herbs but not others, grow whatever you really like, because you'll be a lot more interested in going out there and taking care of your plants if you're actually really excited to, you know, get the flowers or the fruit or whatever. Then, you know, the number one way that people kill plants is by either over or under watering them. So what I would suggest is sticking your finger in the soil and actually feeling it. And if you stick it up to about your second knuckle, then if it's wet, don't water, and if it's dry, it's time to water. Thanks everyone for your questions. It's been a lot of fun sharing my gardening ideas with you. If you have any more questions or you'd like to be inspired to container garden, I would invite you to visit me on my blog, lifeonthebalcony.com. And also keep an eye out for my book, Small Space Container Gardens. It's coming out in January of 2012.